Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the penultimate episode of Feed the Beast here on AFTERBUZZ TV. Abby Vega is not here with me today, but fear not, I will dissect the episode. Stay tuned.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. This is kind of very jazzy music. Things are going good, but not in Feed the Beast land. As I mentioned, we do not have Abby Vega today. It's just me, Phil Svitek, but for our special segment, Wine Time, for those of you who are very avid listeners, you guys might have remembered me talking about an intern here at AfterBuzz who was named Becca Brown, and you know what? I was doing some wine tastings with her, so I brought her in specifically for the special segment. She does not watch the show, unfortunately, but she will be joining me for that. Say hi, Becca.
Hi.
That's right. All right. Now, Becca has to listen to me talk about Feed the Beast for the next couple minutes. At least 30.
I'll be educated.
That's right. Where to begin? So much happens. Let's start with this right off the bat. The whole notion of TJ being Tommy's son and whatnot is at the forefront. That's where we pick off things, and it's interesting how well Tommy and Dion know each other, because they're both doing the math, or at least they're certainly thinking about it in terms of, Tommy's calculating, okay, when was the last hookup of Ray and Dion, and when was TJ born? And I respect Tommy in the sense that he keeps bringing these things up into the front, if you will, the light, and he's not afraid to ask Dion these things. And what I'm most surprised about this episode in particular is the fact that I thought things were really boiling up, and yet here is, obviously we knew Dion was coming back to the restaurant, but here's Pilar still as well. And even though things are very tense, obviously, at the same time, life goes on. The day, the sun comes out, if you will. And so here they are really dealing with it in a way. And obviously so much happens in between. But the fact that at the end, Dion can even... that Tommy, can even look at Dion and say, okay, hey, this is your place as well. Go and have your room. That's something, and he was getting to a place where it'll be interesting fully, because the big switch of Tommy in this episode is the idea that, that perhaps what Dion has been saying about the truth all along is that sometimes it's best to hide the truth and not really think about the truth, and just go with that. And the fact that Tommy is accepting of the lie, certainly with TJ, and then also meaning the gun, but then also the cotton swab to get the DNA to really test if it's his son or not. He's just going to go along with the fact that he knows in his heart of hearts that TJ is his son, and therefore a test is not necessary. Now, obviously, the thing of that is that, you can do a test at any moment, so, if there's ever a time in the future, not saying necessarily in the season finale, but if there was to be a season 2 or more seasons beyond that, if things get questionable again, Tommy can always still do that test. It's not like he's this choice in the moment affects it for the rest of his life. Like, he can always kind of fix that, if you will, or at least find out. So very interesting, and poor TJ in all of this continues to be neglected, and in some ways, while Tommy was obviously, even before knowing about the Ray thing, upset that TJ was latching on to Dion a lot more, obviously now this at the forefront, he told Dion to be cut out of his life. And so here's this kid, and a lot of, I was reading a couple of reviews and episode reviews to kind of help me out with tonight, and a lot of them were saying the fact that here's this poor kid TJ traumatized, and yet no one really seems to notice. I mean, we've pinpointed here between Abby and myself the fact that every time, this kid can't walk outside without hearing some sort of sound that triggers a response regarding the accident of his mom. So definitely not a great place to be in. And every time he hears that trigger, his coping mechanism has become these drawings. But I don't know. It's tough to identify for me whether or not it's actually therapeutic or not. And him drawing the mural with the girl we haven't seen in quite some time. I thought that was going to be like a little bit of a light for their friendship, and that perhaps through these murals he would open up and eventually even talk. Obviously, the show has not gone that route, and instead, his mural got destroyed by Andre, which has led to this. But, you could, in some weird way, what I love about the show is that there's no black or white; it's always gray. And one of the bigger things of tonight was that, okay, the reason why TJ is Tommy's son is the fact that TJ has a good head on his shoulder. And I forget the exact quote, but regardless of, if even TJ was Dion's son, he learned his good behavior from Tommy. And that was Pilar's point. Which, isn't necessarily the best way to look at it, at least if you're Tommy, because that's not what you want to necessarily hear. But I do agree with the fact that it was Tommy's doing that has taught TJ to be good. And in this case, good being relative in the sense that, he brought the gun, and Abby and I were speculating about what TJ would do with this gun. And you know what? For all of our crazy theories where we thought, okay, there's not going to be a bullet, but maybe he's going to scare Andre, that would have still gotten TJ in trouble. So in this regard, obviously he gets Andre in trouble, but it doesn't come back to, have any repercussions for TJ, at least at the moment. And I like that they put to bed any notion, at least for the moment, where the gun can't be traced. It's and whatnot. As Aiden says, like, oh, what do you think? I'm stupid. However, the guidance counselor, I feel like there was that look, and as she was watching TJ get in the car and Tommy and Dion as well, I think she's suspecting a little bit something more. Because she knows that something was too perfect about this. This is Andre's first day back, and here there's a gun in his locker, and the fact of the note being, an anonymous note tipping him off, she knows something's off, and I think she's gonna figure something out in the season finale, and it'll be interesting. The main thing that I'm most curious about is the note and how it was written, because obviously handwriting, it's going to be one of the first things that she can go to is to check, okay, here's what TJ's handwriting looks like versus the note, and then if there's any sort of match, then it becomes obvious. Now, if he was smart enough to kind of change it up a little bit, there's still indications that it could be him, so it's I'm very curious to see how that happens, but I do have to applaud, much like Dion and Aiden, for this curious little plan that TJ put together. But much in that same way, I am conflicted, much like Tommy is, about, okay, while it is very clever, what is the lesson to be learned here, and how would I, if I did have kids, ultimately kind of deal with TJ, for this. And, I think in some ways the fact that TJ, snuggles up with Tommy is an indication that he understands what he actually did and the repercussions that it does have for Andre. To be fair, everyone is right about Andre. This kid was a little dipshit. So, I think one way, shape, or form, he would have ended up getting handcuffed anyway. This is just one of those things that just sped up the process, if you will. But it's going to be interesting to see how Tommy eventually deals with this, because obviously the other big thing that looms is if he went and told anybody at school, obviously it would have kind of spread and whatnot. It would have gotten out there, but the main thing is it would have gone back to Child Protective Services, which isn't already looking too fondly over at Tommy the way it is. And so this definitely would have been the last straw, and I think TJ would have gone into Child Protective Services, and Tommy could have even possibly gone to jail, I think. I don't know how the full repercussions of that would have worked out in the legal system, but I do think he would have gotten some time. If you guys are somewhat familiar, please let me know. Also, if you guys have kids, let me know what how would you guys have handled that situation. I mean, this was the lesser of two evils. There was no good, and so definitely not an easy decision for Tommy. And in that weird sort of perhaps soap opera-ish way, or just in life's weird way, tragedy brings people together, and that's what starts to rekindle the friendship of Tommy and Dion, which, I've liked Tommy and Dion together, but it is also very difficult for me to, if I was in Tommy's shoes, I don't know if I could forgive Dion. So the fact that he's slowly making steps towards that, I don't know. Maybe he is a really good man, But obviously, I want to see how Tommy also interacts with Aiden, because there's so much there. The fact that Aiden, from Aiden's perspective, he is literally about to die. So much so that he thinks, rather than go through the pain, the whole reason why he tries to go after the gun is to but to grab the gun and basically commit suicide. And so when the gun's missing, that kind of changes things up. And obviously in this regard, I think he might be changing his mind. It'll be interesting to see if he wants to go after Tommy to be a donor for the bone marrow. But it's also going to be interesting because Tommy's going to be going after Aiden, in a sense, wanting to have words with him. They left it off very open-ended, in the sense that here's Aiden, who has taught TJ how to fully use a gun, and that just doesn't sit right with Tommy whatsoever. And I think that will be continued, certainly, in the finale. So it'll be interesting to see. There. And I do feel here's the first time, speaking of Aiden, that, we've never seen really Jensen and Aiden interact to this level. Like, we know they have a very special bond, and Jensen's always kind of there and knows about everything that's going on with Aiden. But when the blood in the tub starts to, fill the tub, the fact that Aiden tells Jensen to leave and just let him be, I think symbolizes something deeper, because I don't think Jensen's ever been told to leave the room. She's seen the pain of Aiden, and again, it symbolized the giving up of Aiden, I think, for the first time, and I think she knew that as well. But I do want to. I really like Aiden as a character, and I do want him to confront Tommy about it and see if Tommy is willing to help, which would be interesting. And by the way, the other thing that we speculated was, the TJ continues to be a potential donor, but Aiden doesn't want that. Going back to the paternity test, Babby and I have always speculated that this could be a way to figure out if TJ is actually Tommy's son. And so even though Tommy didn't necessarily want to go in search of the answer, perhaps he might get the answer without him wanting to, just by the sheer nature of this, which would in many ways be very much a travesty. So a lot a lot of deep, dark stuff in this episode. One of the other things that we speculated heavily on was how Marissa and or Dion would find out the connection that, Guy is Marissa's father, the cop, and obviously that he's the father and whatnot. Now, Dion does not find out that Marissa and Guy are connected, but Dion finds out, but certainly Marissa finds out that Dion is connected with her father. And in the most brilliant of ways, I have to say, we speculated, Abby and I speculated on some very cursory sort of devices, meaning, a phone call, a text, and whatnot, and one of them would have seen the phone. I thought it could have been heading that way because the Tooth Fairy calls Dion as he's preparing breakfast, but no, instead, of course, because she's still, at the end of the day, his legal counsel, he plays her the message, and she recognizes that it's her father, and hence why she asks, have you played this for somebody else? No, he hasn't. It would have been interesting. I for sure thought she was going to delete it off his phone and justify it in some sort of legal jargon. But to my knowledge, she could have still done that. We haven't seen, but I don't think she did. And so the fact that it still remains out there is interesting. But it gets more interesting because here's Guy, our cop, who fully resigns everything after he's confronted about it from Marissa. Yet on the other, because it's always interesting. It's almost like, in many ways, it reminds me of American History X, where you don't really get to decide when you want out. Like if a feud's going on, it's going on, and it's not really up to you to decide when it stops. The best way to stop it is to have prevented it, and unfortunately not the case, or not an option for these guys, because the Tooth Fairy's dad is very much upset with his son for not being able to handle business, as he says, and in many ways he's right, mostly stemming from the fact that the Tooth Fairy has feelings for Dion, and that's lent him a soft spot for him, which was a great kind of scene. I thought they set it up very nicely when the Tooth Fairy finally goes to visit Dion, and he has that flashback, and the fact that they touched lips, in that flashback. Again, Dion's just happy about the food, whereas for the Tooth Fairy, it actually meant something much greater. And for him to have to now pound his face into the meat, it was great to see how troubling that was. But at the end of the day, nothing gets in the way of business for the Tooth Fairy, and so he's making statements, and in many ways, statements mean death. We got quite a lot of death, but at least not with Dion. So he still does have somewhat of a soft spot for Dion, but it'll be interesting. Dion's got to come up with the $200K, which is a third of the money that is owed, by next week. Certainly not an easy task. And the biggest thing to come out of it is that Guy is killed. Now, Marissa, still at the end of this, like, what a weird message to leave. Like, hey, I'm just confirming that we're on for breakfast tomorrow. No need to call me back. So I am to assume in that regard, then, that Marissa initiated the brunch. Therefore, he's just kind of confirming. So, they're good. But wait, it'll be something to behold when Marissa goes to that brunch and he does not show up. Or if there's a report in the middle of the night that obviously he's been murdered in one way, shape, or form. It just all depends on how they dispose of the body. So a lot going on, and I apologize for not necessarily going too deeper into it. It's always a little bit more difficult when you're doing it solo. But fear not, whatever I miss, I will discuss at great length with Abby for the season finale. Now, the last sort of storyline to talk about is Pilar, which I give her a lot of credit because I do, after last episode, I thought she was very much just kind of get up and go. and leave this be. But you know what? She's trying to make things work with Tommy, and she obviously knows all of his troubles, and she's trying to ease them as much as possible. And so I give her credit for that regard, and I also, the tough part is I would have liked to see if she had the ability to tell him the truth. Tell the truth to Tommy, if Tommy didn't have to head out when he sees the clock striking 4:30, because he's the one that leaves the conversation. And in particular, one of the lines I liked is Tommy says to Pilar, "You lying liar," meaning, because it's funny because he's crediting her in a good way that she's a fast learner for having lied to, that she has management experience, and now she is helping manage the restaurant quite well. Again, that's kind of phase one of it. Obviously, there's the fact that Oscar isn't actually a real person, and she never had a husband, and certainly he's not dead. And the fact that, again, the biggest thing of all is that history repeated itself when Pilar slept with Dion, a girl that Tommy was somewhat getting interested with. So, you know what? I still don't... The most interesting part is I still don't know how to judge Pilar, but as I said, I give her credit for at least sticking around, and she is trying. At least she showed efforts in wanting to tell Tommy the truth, because she knows how much it is eating away at him. So I'm hoping that she does. Anyway, that's kind of the episode in a nutshell. Again, sorry for not going as deep as perhaps you guys are used to, but fear not. Abby will be back next week, and we will talk about it. I'll get into predictions soon, but as always, before we get into predictions, we're going to have wine time, where, for those of you who are new to the show, we talk about wine, we try to educate you guys, and we try to pair it with some food here, so it's a fun way for us to taste the food, but also try to educate you guys as much as possible. If you don't want to hear predictions, or you don't care for wine time, you're certainly welcome to tune out. Thank you for joining me on this episode, and I'll certainly see you back for the season finale. Now, without further ado, wine time. Hit that music. That's right. We're going to get jazzy in here. Welcome, Becca.
Hi.
Now, Becca, she's not necessarily a wine person, but, she does like seafood. And so today we have a shrimp pasta. And so, I was thinking about, because Abby's done a lot of red wines, and I did a Riesling to begin with. And so I wanted to bring in a white wine. So I was like, okay, what can I bring in? So I thought about a Pinot Grigio. And interestingly enough, it's Pinot Grigio, although it is a white wine, does not come from white grapes. Becca, tell us more.
Pinot Grigio is zesty white wine.
Speak in your mic.
That is as refreshing as a cold glass of lemonade on a hot summer's day. The second most popular white wine in America, Pinot Grigio, aka Pinot Gris, is a dry white wine that has a punchy acidity.
It's got an acidity to it. Yeah, it's got, it goes back. It's dry.
With flavors of lemons, limes, green apples, and honeysuckle.
A lot of people do, and speaking of the summer day, a lot of people chill it. Ours is a little bit chilled, so.
While most believe Pinot Grigio originated in Italy, it was actually born, like many of the most popular grapes of the world, in France, where it is known as Pinot Gris. Thought to be a mutation of the red grape Pinot Noir, Pinot Gris skins are not green like other.
Have a little enthusiasm, Becca.
Like other white grapes, but instead have a grayish-blue hue, which is what gives them their name. The wine was born in Burgundy, but found its way to Switzerland in the 1300s, where it was considered a favorite of the emperor. From here, the grape made its way to northern Italy, and the real story of Pinot Grigio was born. In Italy, Pinot Gris became Pinot Grigio, and the wine found wide success in the regions of
all those places.
Northeastern Italy, which is a lot of places.
That's right. There's a bunch of places that listed in it. Pinot Grigio has its haters among wine snobs who claim the wine is too simple and uninteresting, but it mostly stems from the fact that because Pinot Grigio is so popular, its popularity has resulted in mass production, and in particular, a lot of those wines that have been put out there have a bad taste. They aren't high quality, and so they give it a bad name. What people recommend is one of the best ways to ensure that your drink is delicious and interesting is to simply avoid the budget bottles that are being mass produced and have a lot of marketing behind them. So there you go. That's Pinot Grigio. Now, like I said, it's great on a hot summer day. And we've paired it with shrimp. What does it smell like to you, Becca? What is it? How would you describe the smell? Because the smell, it precedes the taste, and it sets you up for the great taste.
Oh, I don't know. I'm really bad at describing smells.
You're terrible. Why do you even try?
I'm sorry. I'm really bad at describing smells.
All right. Well, how about take a sip? Take a sip.
Okay.
See what it tastes like. What flavors does it evoke? Nothing. Evokes no flavor.
I can't describe like.
Oh my God, you and Abby, I'm done. Hit predictions. Let's just get the predictions.
It doesn't taste bad.
Well, that's a start.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV.
All right. This might be our last wine time. Anyway, I'm very excited for the finale to see what it has in store. So much is going on in the previews. The fact that the Tooth Fairy kind of, I don't know if he presents the full truth, but certainly he tells Tommy something to the fact that Tommy is following the Tooth Fairy, having conversations with the Tooth Fairy. And then Tommy goes out and he has to get this $200K, and so he wants to be put in on a job now. In order to make that kind of money, it has to be a very serious job. Like you're about to rob a bank type of job, or even like a hit on somebody doesn't generate $200K. Like you got to be killing Osama bin Laden here or something to generate that kind of cash for a hit. So I'm very curious to see how this plays out. And obviously, where how we see a small bit of interaction between Marissa and Dion. I'm very curious to see where this goes. And you know what? If this is a hope, so it's honestly a prediction, but I just want TJ to speak in the out of all these characters, TJ is the one who deserves anything like the least amount of this crap that has come his way. And you know what? I just want the season finale to be good for him, so much so that he just starts talking, says one word even, and gets to paint the mural for the school in honor of something like that. That's it. I just want something good to happen to this kid. Will it? I don't know, but I certainly hope so. That's my wish. It's not a prediction, it's a wish. Becca, do you hope for the best?
Yes.
All right.
Definitely.
All right. Well, let me know what you guys think. You guys always have some really good theories. I love talking back and forth with you guys. Last episode, you guys chimed in a lot about the Dion Tooth Fairy relationship, which I thought was very interesting, and shared your various perspectives on that. I appreciate them very greatly. Some of them, it's very well written, all of them, as well as the other comments, of course. But continue doing that. Thank you guys for joining us. We've got the season finale coming up. So much to talk about. As mentioned, @_Abby Vega will be back. But in the meantime, you can certainly tweet her and talk about the episode with her. @AfterBuzz TV, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, all that stuff. And ironically, Becca is one of the people behind all that.
Yay.
So, when she's not drinking wine, she's doing that.
Yes.
Thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you for the season finale of AMC's Feed the Beast 3.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz
See you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.